Yo, comrades, hope everyone's doing great. We're here to talk about Highlander End Game, the kind of connection movie between Connor and Duncan. So we start off with some Connor action. We get Duncan right away as well. But then we switch over to more of a Duncan-centered situation. We get some friends that show up, like Mythos and... Oh, I totally forgot his name. Joe. Jeez. But the main story kind of focuses around this incident that occurred in Scotland. I think before Duncan, because Duncan, I think the incident happens in the 1500s. Yeah, it has to be because it deals with Connor and his mother. So Connor's just like hanging out, chilling with his like wife from like the first movie. Back in like the 1500s, and everything's going fine. And then these guys come up and they're like threatening his wife and threatening him and calling him like a witch and all this stuff. And they say something about his mother, and so he's got to go see his mother. So he heads back to like Glenfinnan or something, like the traditional home of the MacLeods. And there, his mother's like sick, and he's in there like talking to her and trying to reassure her. And he's like, "I'm going to take you to my place so you can be safe." When these like not crusaders, but these like this priest and some like other assholes show up, and they're gonna burn her at the stake. Well, they're gonna kill him and then burn her at the stake because she spawned a devil, right? Unless she, and he's the devil because he keeps being reborn. So they take him out. They leave him there for some reason. They just don't like. None of them are immortal, so they don't need to cut off his head or anything like that. So, but they take his mom and they ask for like a final confession, and then they're like, you need to be burned at the stake. So they start burning her, and then Connor wakes up and he rides over and he starts just like massacring people. He rescues his mom, or he almost about to rescue his mom, but then some guy put like black powder on her so that it would explode and kill her faster, so she doesn't have to die of like the smoke inhalation or whatever. And then he gets super pissed off and he starts just like stabbing people. And one of these guys, this Kel, I think his name, yeah, Kel he's like the adopted son of this priest, and he was raised in like the order and everything. So Duncan kills the priest. He didn't mean to. Not Duncan, sorry. Connor kills the priest. He didn't mean to, but he did. And then he kills Kale, but Kale is like an immortal, and he knew that because, we know that. And so, and then he like takes off. He really should just cut off his head and be done with the whole situation, right? That's the biggest. This is one of those movies that is like, it's not the best, because of the things we know about how immortals know other immortals, and it's like just knowing the human condition and being like, I mean, Connor was pretty young here, so it's slightly forgivable, but sometimes stuff occurs and it's like, bro, you've been alive for like 600 years, you know exactly how human beings are going to act, like, better, like, just kill this guy, just be done with the whole situation. So I guess this is a little bit more forgivable. Anyway, so then Kel becomes like, he's the main antagonist of this whole series. We go to Connor, we go to like the modern day, but like 10 years before. So this is before like the seasons and all that stuff from the Highlander series, pretty much. And Connor like reaches out to Duncan. He's like, "Hey, I need to talk to you. Come to New York." And so Duncan comes to New York. He's like, "Hey man, I came all the way here. Something, what's going on?" And Connor's like, he gets like a message, or he gets like a vibe, and he's like, "I'll come find you later and talk to you." And then he like races back to his antique shop where his daughter, Rachel, his like, adopted daughter from like the German times. So, it's Rachel, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Rachel. Rachel, yeah. And so before he can get there, this Kel guy like blows up his antique shop and kills Rachel. And he's like, "No!" And then we go 10 years into the future, so past the seasons now. Now we've gone from like before to afterwards. And Connor is just like locked up in this like bizarre like sanctuary where he's got like this iron mask on and he's tied to like a machine or something. And then we get this group of like immortals that like roll up on this thing, and then we get like a cool like gunfight, and there's like some Asian guy and he looks vaguely familiar, but I don't know who he is and I don't care to look him up. Anyway, so then they fight and they kill these guys, and we find out these guys, these like monks are not monks, they're like watchers, and what they're doing is they're like keeping these immortals like in like a torpor, because they want to check out, but they don't want to die. And the watchers don't want them to die, because if there's only one, it kind of goes to that concept where it's like, well, if the mortals win and there's only one left, then he's going to become like a god, king, emperor of the world, and we don't want that. So we're going to do everything we can to like not allow that to happen. So as long as there's two people, immortals alive, that can never happen. So victory, right? But then Kel kills his way inside, and then he gets inside, and then he kills like all the immortals inside and gets all their sweet, delicious quickening. right? Then we switch over to Duncan, and Duncan is, let's see, gang up mortals, subdue him. And then so Duncan is like investigating this whole thing, trying to figure out what's going on, like where Connor's gone and whatnot. And then he runs into like his wife. And so there's this wife of his, Faith or Kate, who I think she goes by Kate now, but she was Faith. Anyway, so then we get some backstory on that. So he sees her and they like chat for like a second, and then she like skirts off after like calling him like an asshole. And we go to like the 1600s at some point. He like found this woman who he knew was an immortal. And so, he gets like married to her because they fall in love. There's a whole scene with like Duncan and Connor like rescuing her from some like highway bandits or something, or doing some crazy nonsense. And then they get married, and, Connor and him are talking about it. And Connor doesn't want to come to the wedding. He like meets with them outside because I think Kel's there. Maybe there was a guy who looked like him, but I'm not sure if that's him exactly. But then he like warns Duncan about the whole situation with Faith, because they know she's immortal, but we get more of that. Like in the end of the season, it was like, oh, immortals can only become immortals if it's like a violent death, from Raven. I don't think it ever came up before Raven, to be completely honest. But it came up here, it came up there, and it came up in this movie. So this movie might have came out before Raven, and so that might have come up there, to be completely honest, or here first. But so you have to have a violent death. So she's not gonna, if she just grows old and dies, she'll just die. Otherwise she won't like awaken her immortality or something nonsense like that. And so Duncan's like really concerned about that. And this is like several flashbacks that occur. And so then we find out that like after they seal the marriage with sex, he takes a dagger and like stabs her, and then she like wakes up and he's like, you're an immortal, I'm an immortal, blah, 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 blah. And he didn't like prep her at all for any of this stuff. And so she freaks out and like runs off, and she holds it against him ever since, because there's a whole thing where she's like, I never had kids or anything because of you. And it's like, no, because you're immortal. You could have never had kids in the first place. So like, it's kind of crazy. But her whole thing is like, you didn't give me a choice, something. And this happens because at some point Duncan like tracks her down to like this warehouse. And there's like the whole of Kel's crew, and they like jump him, and he's like fighting. And then he's having like a real rough go because it's like 5 guys on one, which is like fucked up. And then there's a whole thing where it's like they're at a sanctuary. Well, that's the other thing too. The sanctuary they were in was like a sanctuary. So mortals shouldn't have been able to kill people there, and then they do, and it doesn't seem to be a big deal. And then, which breaks canon lore when it comes to the Holy Ground situation. But then again, it's like, I don't know if it ever established like this church or this cavern they're in was actually on holy ground. They kind of hinted at it. But it kind of messes with the lore, which isn't that great, because we learned that like last time immortals fought on holy ground, there was like Pompeii, right, from the TV series. So not the best research on all that writing. Anyway, so let's see. Oh no. Okay. Sorry. Before all this goes on, he's having like dreams and premonitions about Connor, because Connor's been missing for all this time. And so he's having a lot of flashbacks with Connor and stuff. So he meets with Mythos, and Mythos, so Mythos kind of tells him some stuff. Okay. And then Duncan finds the sanctuary where Connor was supposedly being held. And about how they violated the holy ground rule and all that stuff. And I think it's at that point Duncan goes, no, he doesn't find the sanctuary then. No. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. So then Duncan follows them. He gets beat up by these guys. At the last second, Kel lets him go. And so, or he stops the guy from like killing him or something. And then Duncan like gets shot instead, or he shoots Duncan. Duncan falls out the window, lands on like, gets impaled, and then these like fake police / the Watchers pick him up and grab him, and then they take him to the sanctuary, and then he's having an argument with this guy. This isn't who the Watchers are, something they're doing, and this is where the crazy guy in this episode, which he barely shows up, is like, no, as long as we can keep one of you alive away from the other person, then like we never have to worry about like the quickening being the last, or there is no last one or whatever. And he's like freaking out and trying to break out. And then some time goes by, and then Joe shows up and rescues him. And then him and Mythos take him, and they're driving off. And Duncan's like, I know where Connor's at. Take me to this location. And it's this graveyard. So Duncan, and how he gets to that point, I don't know. Not important. So he goes in there, and Connor's alive. Holy cow. And then we say goodbye to Mythos and Joe Dawson forever. Unless they're in the next movie, which I've never seen. And so they talk and they argue about what needs to be done and about Kale. And then Kale shows up at this graveyard with Kate and they have like an argument. And then Duncan's at his house like meditating or whatever. And Kate shows up and then they fuck. And then they get into an argument then. And this is where we get like more of the flashback. And she's like, I hate you. The only reason I joined up with Kale is because he has so much hate in his heart. And that's what I need because I hate you because of what you did to me. And it's like, okay, crazy. And then she goes back to like their little playpen with like Kale and all his crew. And they get into like a funny argument about how he's going to have sex with her. And she's like, I don't think so. And he's like, we'll see about that. It's like crazy. Or that's the thing. So you think he's talking about sex, but then we find out later she talks to like the Asian guy at some point and he's got some like qualms with the way Kel's doing things and like his trust about his ability as a leader. And then they have that weird conversation, and then after that, they're having like some strange meal with like all the whole crew's there. They're eating and like laughing and stuff, and Kate looks very nervous, and the Asian guy looks very concerned. And then Kel like jumps up on the table and he's like, "It's time for you all to join with me." And he starts just like cutting off heads, and then the Asian guy tries to fight him, and he gets killed. And then it looks like Kate loses her head, but then at the end of the movie, it seems like she did not. So the whole thing was like very confusing. I think he just stabbed her real good. Anyway, Duncan senses all this like craziness going on somehow, and he goes to like confront Kale, or he senses Connor like on the roof of his building or whatever. And then he goes up there and they're talking, and then Connor's like, and there's like a whole scene where Joe's like talking about like the kill counts of each Immortals and how the Watchers like track it, and like Connor's got like 200 something confirmed kills, Duncan's got like 160 something, and then this Kale guy's got like 600, so he's like way more powerful because he's got more kills under his belt. But it's like, don't like the previous kills transfer over? I don't know. Anyway, it's like this movie is not as well written. The movies are just, they don't hold up as well as the TV series. I got to say that. They're fun. There's a lot of fighting in this, right? Like I'm skipping over a lot. There's a lot of like fighting, then more fighting, then there's like fighting over here, and like the monk fighting went on for like 15 minutes. Like it was pretty good. It's like a fun action-packed realm. Anyway, so now Connor is like, one of us has to we have to combine forces. So I got like so many kills and you got so many kills, like power levels, and we have to kill each other, and then we'll combine our powers and then we can be Kale. And Duncan's like, I don't want to. And then him and Connor like forces them to fight, and then forces them to fight, and then Duncan like wins, but then kind of steps away, and then Connor's like, I'm not going to give up until one of us wins. And so if you don't want to fight, I will kill you, and then I will go fight Kale. And then Duncan finally like takes Connor's life, and he's all sad eponymous about that. But now it's time to go get Kale. Kale. So he heads over back to his place. Or no, I think Kale shows up. Or no, there might be around his place. I don't know. It was kind of hard to follow. But for some reason, him and Kale are now, they meet up and then they start fighting. And then Kale's like, it's a pretty good battle. Like they're fight. Duncan's really hurt. He like, they fall down like something for some reason, drop their swords, picks up swords. They start fighting again. It looks like Duncan might lose and die. And then he like gains power from like Connor. Like literally, he like transforms into Connor momentarily, which throws Kale off and allows him to like get a nice sweet blow on him, and then get him, and then he cuts his head off, and it's like, raw, and he gets all like 628 delicious kills under his belt of this whole situation. And so now, Duncan's able to like power up, and then it skips ahead to like Duncan's hanging out, and it looks like it's like New Year's or something. And he's just like smiling and thinking about stuff, thinking about Connor, and has like a short little flashback of like all the stuff Connor did. And then this makes Duncan like, and then he turns around and like Kate's there. And at first I thought he was having like another illusion or like a flashback to something or whatever. But no, I guess she's there. And then they like hug it out and kiss and presumably go on to do whatever. But that wraps up the movie. So that's Highlander End Game. So it was a kind of a wild ride. Didn't make like a whole lot of sense, but it's like an extended episode with a lot more blood and killing. And I mean, you don't see any of the sex stuff at all. So it's like, I think this movie's rated R, but it's kind of confusing why it's rated R. But all in all, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. And I hear that a lot of people liked it when it came out in like 2000 and something. But the next movie is supposed to be universally despised. So I will probably like it, to be completely honest. That's usually how this rolls out. But yeah, join me in a couple weeks and we'll get to Highlander, The Source. So y'all have a good one, and I'll catch y'all later.